Tell me when.
When?
Now.
Welcome to episode 31. I'm Jack Murphy, here with my co-host Dave Park. You can see him right over here. We are here with our guest tonight, Kent Clizbe. Kent served as a CIA staff operations officer and afterwards as an intelligence contractor. Has pretty extensive experience working in Southeast Asia, West Africa. He was the coalition liaison during the invasion of Iraq from the agency. So he has a lot of experience in a lot of interesting parts of the world. And Kent and I have also kind of orbited each other in some sort of odd ways. Once we both had some strange encounters with a CIA imposter named Wayne Simmons, who was a Fox News host. We'll talk about that a little later. And then it's really funny because I had talked to Kent a few different times. And then I went to the Philippines in 2017 to do a bunch of reporting on the Philippines Special Operations Units. And I ended up meeting a lot of people who had worked with Kent back in the early days of the War on Terror in the southern Philippines. And I did not at the time put two and two together because like a Marine colonel would be like, yeah, I was in my living room with the CIA guy and we were plotting, these missions targeting terrorists. And I didn't realize that guy in his living room was Kent. So it wasn't until way later that I kind of put two and two together. But anyway, that's enough for me. Kent, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Really appreciate having you on.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, maybe just to kick this off, you can tell us a little bit about where you came from. You had sent me a picture of some bullet holes in your bedroom wall. I guess the streets were pretty real where you grew up in, where was it, North Carolina?
Yeah, I grew up in Halifax County, North Carolina, a little place called Roanoke Rapids. You drive down 95 going from New York to Florida, you drive right through it. You smell it before you see it. the industry's a paper
tobacco
mill. No, paper mill.
Paper
mill.
Oh, yeah, you definitely smell paper.
Yeah.
Paper mills
it was a great place to grow up, but I was kind of on the good side or the wrong side of the tracks. Not quite in the in the worst areas, but I definitely wasn't in the best areas. That picture I shared with you was my buddy lived across the street named Timmy Little. Nice redneck guy. Another guy we knew named Chuck Allsbrook was riding his bike by Timmy's house, and Timmy did not like Chuck. There's some kind of story there. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but Timmy pulls out his .22 and let loose at Chuck, and missed Chuck, but he hit my bedroom window.
So it was a reverse drive-by. There's a ride-by.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
There's a reverse ride-by.
Reverse drive-by. I never thought about it like that. Yeah.
Nice.
So the talking about the agency and that kind of background, what's really interesting is you look at a lot of agency guys who end up being ops officers. They'll, you read biographies that life stories guys have written. They talk about, well, my summer at the Sorbonne when I was in seventh grade, and then I was in Aspen as a ski bum for college, and that's not really useful when you're out trying to recruit terrorists. I found that my background was not quite as privileged. I'd never been on a ski slope until I was 35 and took my kids there. But my background of a little less privilege and a little bit more grit and reality was quite useful in dealing with bad guys.
So how did you get to the CIA then? Like, what took you
before
there?
that, I mean, those pictures of you going on the Hajj, I mean, how does a young guy from Roanoke Rapids end up converting to Islam and ending up in some of these parts of the world?
Well, how much time do we have?
3 hours. Some of these episodes run for, so we got time.
Until we finish that bottle of Lafroy, basically.
Okay. Well, that part is further on in the story. How did a kid from Roanoke Rapids end up in the CIA? I did not take the standard way, that's for sure. I like to say that the best thing that I ever did in my life was to join the military, and the second best thing was to get out. The military saved my life, put me straight, gave me self-discipline. They sent me to Monterey to learn Vietnamese. I went to Defense Language Institute, learned Vietnamese. Why did I join the military? I had zero interest in being in the military. I got out of high school, and everybody's going to college. I said, yeah, I'll go too. That year that summer that I went to college. Playboy named the college that I went to the #1 party school in the country, East Carolina University. That summer also, Belushi, the National Lampoon, NationalLampoon's
Animal House.
Shoot, what was it called?
Animal
House. Yes. Animal House came out. So here I am.
If you haven't seen it.
Here I am. This kid from the sticks, end up in the #1 party school, and Animal House is out. I didn't really know why I was there. So the next 3 semesters, I got really, really good at BSing. I learned that I could go to a party and get free beer and talk to anybody about anything in those 3 semesters. My GPA was about 0.23, but I got a lot out of it. So the 4th semester, I said, hey, this is great. Living Greenville, North Carolina was where ECU is. And I said, I love living in Greenville. Why do I need to go to school? I'll just stay here. I'll get me a job. So I had a couple jobs. I worked in a convenience store at night and a T-shirt factory during the day. I made silk screen. I was the frame maker. Pitiful. I'm not making, I don't know, probably $4.25, $5.50 an hour, something like that.
And you're building out the frames that they would use to lay them down?
Yeah, exactly. It's a wooden frame. I built the frame, put the screen on it, coat it with this chemical that then is burned. The design is burned into the screen. I did that for about 6 months. I didn't have any transportation. I had a little Harley 250 Enduro motorcycle that I'd probably paid $250 for. About every other day, it wouldn't start. So I'm constantly out kicking my bike and trying to get to this stupid T-shirt factory job. One day it wouldn't start. I lived in a big party house with a bunch of other folks, probably 9, 10 other people. So my bike wouldn't start. Some guy's girlfriend had a little Vega, Chevy Vega, and I said, hey, can I borrow your car just to get to work this time? She said, sure, go ahead. I backed out of the driveway, nailed a telephone pole. So here I am. I don't have 2 pennies to rub together. I can just barely feed myself. Now I've got to repair this poor girl's car. That was kind of like, okay, what in the heaven's name am I doing here? I can do better than this. Luckily, I'd taken the ASVAB in high school just on a whim. I just took it. So they had my scores down at the recruiter. Next day, I walked into the. I looked at, from my limited knowledge, I said, the Air Force is probably the least military of the services, and I'm not really, I need to do this to save myself, not necessarily to go to war or anything. Right. So I went to the Air Force recruiter. I got really good scores in the ASVAB. He said, yeah, you can go in 3 months. So that's how I ended up in the military. And,
how old were you at this time?
So I'm 19 probably. This was, 19.
Yeah.
Yeah, I came in. I started the Air Force when Ronald Reagan was inaugurated. I was at basic training when Ronald Reagan was inaugurated the first time.
And what job with your scores and everything? What job did the recruiters sell you on?
They sold me on whatever I could leave the quickest, and it was I went in open general, which meant they figure out once you get there.
Yeah.
So it didn't matter to me. You know, I had not been. I was pretty doggone hungry. You know,
Yeah.
I just barely had money for beer, and you know, food was like a secondary consideration. So I didn't care. I got a free place to live. I got a warm bed and 3 meals a day. I put on weight in basic training.
But if you went to DLI to learn Vietnamese, I mean, they must have funneled you into like MI or something like that, right?
So in the way the Air Force did it back then was, I assume they still probably do, but since I wasn't guaranteed a job or anything in basic, based on my ASVAB scores, I took other tests. One of them is the DLAB, the Defense Language Aptitude Battery. I took that and I did good. You know, I had no idea that I had any aptitude for languages, but I did good, and they offered me to be a linguist, crypto linguist. I said, sure. What do I need to do? They said, well, when you get out of basic, you go to Monterey, California. Sounds good to me. So I signed up.
How long was Vietnamese, the course?
So the basic course was 42 weeks. That was North Vietnamese, and then we went back and redid the whole course in South Vietnamese in 5 weeks. So it ended up being 47 weeks.
So is it Cat 3 then?
What is that? Is that the difficulty?
Yeah.
I forget all those the terminology, but probably. Yeah.
Did you have a good time at Monterey?
Oh, it was fantastic. I mean, Monterey was a great place to live. I got married right out of basic training, and which got me to live off base. I got I had a little apartment 2 blocks off Cannery Row. Could walk to school. I call it school. And I'm walking to school. I used to pinch myself. I'm wearing my Air Force uniform, walking in this beautiful place. You know, here I am, a redneck out of the paper mill, and 6 months ago, you know, pushing my dead Harley motorcycle trying to get to my t-shirt factory job. Now here I am. Wait, is this real? Yeah, it is real. I am walking on this road going up a hill. I turn around and I look back, and I'm looking out this vista of Monterey Bay. Yeah. I can see Santa Cruz in the back, and the Cannery Row is right here. I couldn't believe it.
So that beautiful place.
What was your military service like?
So after all the training, there wasn't a lot of use for Vietnamese back then, but we did have one use, and that was the Soviets were using our bases in Vietnam, our old bases, Cam Bay especially, and they used that they flew their nuclear bombers, the bombers that carried nuclear missiles in and out of Cam Bay. So twice a year they would swap out. So for 3 years I sat at Clark in the Philippines with headsets on, tied to a rack, listening to the Vietnamese, and really all we cared about was those twice a year to hear the Vietnamese go, hey, the friends just took off, and boom, that was our big intel. It took me a couple years to figure that out, because we sat there listening 24 hours a day, 3 shifts, rotating shifts, but after a couple years, I realized, all this other stuff we're listening to, nobody cares about. Nobody cares what the Vietnamese are flying their decrepit MiGs down in Bien Hoa or something. All we were focused on was the Soviets flying out of Cam Ranh. So I did that for 3 years.
So after DLI, did you go to San Angelo? Is that where you got your cryptolinguist training?
Yep.
San Angelo? Yeah. Little
good
town.
Goodfellow Air Force Base out in the middle of nowhere, out in the desert.
Yeah.
So at the end, you were not quite satisfied with your job in the Air Force?
Yeah, I mean, it opened up a whole world to me. It opened up, the military gave me self-discipline. Got me out of this party boy. Just living for the next beer or whatever. Helped me realize I can learn. I've got some. I have some skills that are useful. I have aptitudes. So I got that from the military. I got the introduction to Asia, to the Asian cultures, to the Asian, the whole international world opened up to me. The military did it. Without that, there's no telling what I would have been doing. But like I said, the best thing that ever happened to me, the second best thing was I got out, because I'm not cut out to be in the military. I'm a really bad bureaucrat. I'm really bad at, I guess, taking orders. I'm really good at using my initiative and my native common sense to figure things out and do it myself. The military, I was not really appreciated in the military. There wasn't a there wasn't a I didn't see a career path that would make
what happened after you got out? Because we were talking a little bit about earlier, you had some more overseas travel afterwards.
Yeah, so once the whole international world opened up to me, once I discovered that I really loved Asia, I found out I'm not going to stay in the military. I started trying to figure out, okay, what do I do now? Right. There was no GI Bill back then. I was in the middle. I was in between the Vietnam and between the wars starting. Mm-hmm. I was in that gap. So I got no benefits. So I had to. They had some program where if you could make a deposit once a month or something, and they would double it, like up to $90 a month. I think it was ridiculous. But at least they tried. But I had to figure out what am I going to do with the rest of my life now that I've discovered my interests, discovered my abilities. So I started. My research led me to with Vietnamese, at the time there was still quite a big refugee population, and refugees were still coming in from Southeast Asia. So I decided that would be the best application of my skills to get in the refugee industry, if you will. And the way to do that was to get a degree in teaching English as a second language. That was pretty much the best in. So I figured out what school could you. There's two universities that had Vietnamese at the time: Cornell and Southern Illinois University. Since I didn't have, I was going to be paying for it on my own. I had to go for the cheapest place, so I ended up in Carbondale, Illinois. Established residency there, and was able to finish my degree in, I think, 3 semesters. I took all the CLEP tests before I left the military, did all the CLEPs, got all my basic credits out of the way, and ended up able to, at Carbondale, I was able to take all of the higher level major classes, linguistics, instructional design. I did sort of a double major. I did political science and Southeast Asian studies as well. So, and lucky me, I also met my wife. There was Southern Illinois University was at the time. It was like a small Malaysia. Malaysia used to, back in the 80s or right up to the 90s, used to send thousands of students to the States they would send them in their first year after high school as freshmen, and they would stay through they up to PhD. So my wife was one of those students. So I discovered at Carbondale, I discovered Malaysia, I discovered that culture, I discovered many other interesting aspects of Asian culture, that kind of thing. So as we were finishing up, she finished her graduate degree, I finished my undergraduate. We're trying to figure, and she was going to have to go back to Malaysia to pay back her scholarship.
All right.
Yeah, so here I've got my degree in teaching English as a second language. The idea is to get back to, say, the Philippines in a refugee camp. There's refugee camps in Malaysia at the same time too, but there weren't so many jobs there. Ended up she went back to Malaysia to teach. I got a job first. I did I was a childcare supervisor in a refugee orphanage in Peoria, Illinois. The kids that they call them unaccompanied minors, kids that, like, as the boat is, I don't know if y'all are familiar, but they called it the boat people back then.
Yeah.
The refugees, they would leave on boats. As the boat was pulling away, parents would run out and toss their kid in.
Holy
because
shit.
It cost a lot of money to get on one of those boats, and so there's a lot of instances of unaccompanied minors would show up, and the program that I worked in was the only program that would accept unaccompanied minors from the refugee camp to come to the States. So it was like an orphanage in effect. So that was my first job in the refugee industry. That qualified me to go to get a job in the Bataan, Americans say Bataan, the Bataan refugee camp, refugee processing center. It was huge. It was like a city back then. It was about 20,000 refugees, Southeast Asian refugees. So the final processing before they came to the States. So I got a job there I was a supervisor in the work orientation program. So I'm in Bataan. My wife is in KL. I worked, my schedule was 6 weeks on, 2 weeks off. No, 6 weeks on, 1 week off, 6 weeks on, 2 weeks off. So every 2 week break, I was flying to KL. And that was really interesting because I had to convince her family that I was worthy of her. They had to accept me, and they're Muslim. So for her to marry me, she could only marry a Muslim. So I had to convert. So I'm going through this whole process at the same time. Learning about Islam, going to talking with folks, reading things, and it was worth it. To get her. She's the best thing that ever happened to me.
Is there a process for that? Sorry to interrupt you, but is there Are there classes in order for them to recognize you as a convert?
Right, like to become a Jew, like there is a real process you have to go through. It's no joke.
Right.
Yes and no. Generally speaking, to become a Muslim, all you have to do is recite the articles of faith. That's That's in effect. Okay. That's all there is to it. However, there's always bureaucracies.
Sure.
So for example, to get a marriage license in Malaysia, a convert has to go to the Bureau of Islam. I can't even remember what it's called, exactly what it's called, but it's like the official Islamic bureau, and you go and you
Sorry, that's horrible. BOI. Never mind.
Yeah,
sorry, that's horrible.
Yeah. They don't use the English name; they use the Malay name, and I can't even remember the Malay name. But all that is you go to the Islamic bureau and meet one of the officials and recite the Declaration of Faith, and he witnesses it, and then he fills something out that says, "Yes, I heard him say that. Yes, he appears to be sincere," and that's it.
So you had a lot of life experience, Ken, a lot of international experience. How did all of this lead you towards the CIA? Like, that's kind of an interesting, hard turn in your life.
Yeah. Like I said, how much time do we got?
we got some time. I'm ready to segue into your professional career in the intelligence community.
Yeah. So it seems like an easy answer, but when you hear the answer, you'll laugh at me. But you got to know what led up to it. So once we got married, and I'm going back and forth from Malaysia to Bataan, back and forth. We realized, you know what, this isn't going to work. We got to be together. I could not get a work permit in Malaysia. I could get a job, but not legally. So I started looking for a job for that we could. Since she was an English teacher too. She taught English as a second language. So I found us a husband and wife job in Saudi, in King Saud University business school, in Unaiza Al Qasim. So we went there as a couple, as a teaching couple, and we did a year contract teaching there. It was a very interesting experience. I like to always put a positive spin on things, but it was when they asked us to renew our contract, I literally laughed in their face. They treated us like shit. They treated us really, really bad, and so it helped us to, it was a step on the way, but we stayed there 1 year. From there, we went to London, and I ended up working for a British company doing language consulting. They sent me to Italy, and I was the American voice in the R&D facility for Olivetti. I created an American language program for all of the R&D folks from the C-suite down to the floor in Olivetti. And my wife was pregnant. So that was it right there. This is the dirty little secret. And when I told them this in the agency, when I started, when they asked, so why did you join? They were used to, in Aspen, when I was,
I was a young Republican, and
or they're used to I don't know, very different stories. They would ask me, and I'd say, dude, I needed health insurance. I had a wife and a baby, and I had no health insurance. I needed health insurance.
What do you do when you need health insurance? Join the CIA. Everybody knows that. It's common sense.
So we had to go back to Malaysia to have the baby because we didn't have insurance. And y'all met that baby tonight.
Yeah.
Oh, your son.
Yeah, he was born in KL. While we were having the baby there, I started studying to get into MBA, to take my GMAT, I was going to do MBA International Business. By now I'm over 30. I'm in my early 30s. I come back and with the idea of doing the MBA, and found out that there wasn't a lot of demand for an over 30-year-old international business guy. So now I had to scramble. I go, okay, what do I do now? So I went ahead and got my graduate degree, continuing in the same field, linguistics, because I was able to get graduate assistantships, and it didn't cost me anything. So I was able to get health insurance and enough to get by for a couple years, but that was just buying time. Now I have to apply for jobs and start figuring out what can I do. Because of my background in Intel, because I'd had a clearance, I started looking at intelligence jobs. So I was applying to. I wasn't really interested in working for NSA because, in effect, that's who I'd worked for in the military. And I didn't really want to do that anymore. I got really sick of wearing headphones, and I knew that I was a people person, and I needed something that I could deal with people. So the CIA was a much better fit. They really were not hiring much back then, but I put in my application, and took a couple years before finally they made me an offer.
About
long answer, but that's the story, and I'm sticking to it.
About what year was this when you first applied to the CIA?
So my kid was born in '89, and I EOD'd in '94, January of '94. Okay. So that probably somewhere in between there.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about your career then in the agency before 9/11 happened and so much changed for the intelligence community and the Department of Defense? I mean, they were shooting you out to places in Southeast Asia and West Africa. I mean, it looked like they kept you pretty busy.
Yeah, that was after 9/11 when I was a contractor. When I was in as staff in the 90s, that was the Clintons had just gotten reelected. Al Gore was talking about our big push was going to be literally, he said, environmental intelligence.
I remember.
And that was where I was in the agency, had been in like a year, and we're looking at each other going, what in the hell is environmental intelligence? Is this what I signed up for? What am I going to do? Be like, sampling effluent or something? I spot, assess, develop, and recruit human sources, foreign sources of human intelligence. So it was there wasn't a lot of mission in the late 90s. I did get a chance to go out and work in the Mediterranean. I was the Libya dude back then. We were chasing the Pan Am. I forgot their Lockerbie bomb, Pan Am 007, I think. It was a Pan Am flight that was bombed over Lockerbie, Scotland. Libyan intel guys put the bomb on in Malta. Mm-hmm. So I spent a couple years in the Mediterranean doing that when I was a staff officer. I had a follow-on assignment to go to Saudi. I was going to Jeddah, and at the same time, what was happening in the real world was .com, the new economy. It was exploding, and I'm sitting there in this another bureaucracy that I'm not good at functioning in, but I was really good at my job. But the bureaucracy didn't care. You're so you're good at it. So what? Sit down. Shut up, boy. Wait your turn. The new economy is exploding. I'd learned I was really, really good at recruiting. I was good at vetting. I was good at spotting, assessment. I was good at getting people to agree to sign on the dotted line. And I said, I wonder what I could do in the new economy with these skills.
Right.
And I looked around and I said, headhunter. Executive recruiting. So I resigned. I jumped out without a parachute. I took a job with a company, 100% commission. Had 2 kids and a wife with we'd probably saved up probably 6 months cushion, but I was on 100% commission. Within less than 6 months, I ended up being 80% of. I worked for a really small firm, but I was 80% of our revenue, and immediately went out on my own. Started my own headhunting company, specialized in computational linguistics. All of my clients were startups out in Silicon Valley. Did that until 9/11. So, new economy's going this way. 9/11 comes, new economy crashed, CT went up.
Yeah.
So I just surfed one wave, the new economy onto the CT wave, because on 9/12 we had a mission, and so I was back knocking on the door. Hey guys, I'm good to go, and boom. That's when I ended up doing the contract.
Explain for us how that works. That I think we all understand that, or the public understands. You join an organization like the CIA, you go through their training, you become an officer, and you go and you meet people in cafes and recruit sources and things like this. But this whole contractor thing is still, I think, a little baffling to people. How do you come into the agency as a contractor, as a green badger in this case? And in a lot of ways, it's like you're doing your old job.
Oh yeah, definitely. Especially back then, the agency used contractors, but there was they were very. They were brought in for specific offices. Specific offices would bring them in to do a specific job. Many times there'd be retirees who just came back and did their old job. After 9/11, though, the CIA was very lean when 9/11 happened. They'd been doing early retirements. There had not been much hiring. So when 9/11 happened, immediately qualified case officers, ops officers, were deployed all around the world. They were needed in, they had to deploy to war zones. They had to deploy to hot spots. They had to deploy all over, and they very quickly found out they didn't find out. They knew from the very beginning they didn't have enough people. So there was an immediate need for contractors, and so they realized there's a need for contractors, and if this goes on very long, we're going to need to up our hiring and training as well. But to serve the immediate need, they really had to turn to contractors.
So when you use the term contractor, I think a lot of people think of like Blackwater or Triple Canopy or things like that when they hear the word contractor. But you're talking about something that's not through something like that, but sort of organic to...
Well, you're working directly for the federal government.
Yeah, exactly. So the way the agency dealt with that was to create something they called the cadre. The cadre was a sort of holding pen for qualified case officers, qualified ops officers, who they could come in and sign an open-ended contract with the cadre. So the cadre could hold your clearance. You could have a badge. You have all of the security clearances. The cadre held your clearance, and then the cadre acted like a employment office in effect. So you'd have a roster of cadre members, and then you have places all around the world are calling in, offices in wherever they are calling in saying we need people to do this. So then they're just matching up available people with available jobs. I'm not sure. I want to say 4 years, maybe 5 years. It lasted like that. But as they saw that this was going to go on for a lot longer than, it was going to be more than 6 months or a year, they started changing pretty quickly to a more corporate contracting environment. They kept the cadre around, but they also it was mostly retired SIS guys formed their own companies, which they're in effect body shops,
right?
Taking retired guys, and they would have a company. The company would have a contract, and then the company would hire in effect like Blackwater, as you mentioned. Right. But I can't remember the name of the big one. The one that first started it. I can remember the guy's name, but I can't remember the name of the company. He ended up making millions of dollars.
Yeah, I mean, weren't some of the other companies like BAE?
MVM was one.
MVM was one. But those were more on the security side, I think. But there were other companies. That were feeding other needs, right?
Exactly. As for the operational side, there was one, I can't remember. Hollis Helms was the guy's name that started it. One of the guys that started it, but I can't remember the name. But yes, it all became corporatized after a bit.
And so what was that like? Kent, coming in after 9/11, I mean, were you getting thrown into the fray? I mean, how did all that shake out?
Yeah, so that was what we had a mission that one of the main reasons I had left was we didn't have a mission in the 90s. Right. We had a mission. It was clear. There were a lot less bureaucratic hurdles that you had to clear. There was a lot more focus, especially out in the field. Headquarters was still kind of very bureaucratic. There was things happening that didn't really help the mission. But once you got out in the field, then it was pretty much do what you got to do, and we had a lot to do. So what it was like was nonstop. There was nonstop something to do. We were opening offices, we were opening programs in a lot of places. They needed people with expertise in operations and counter-terrorism, and if you were willing to travel, you could travel nonstop, 365 days a year, and operate.
Is that because some of the other employees weren't quite so willing, and unlike the military, they don't have to really if they don't want to, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. So everybody at first, the employees, the staff officers, everybody's good to go. I mean, I say everybody, but of course there's probably some who weren't. But 9/11, that really changed most everybody's attitudes. Okay, let's go. 6 months later, 8 months later, 9 months later, this place really sucks. I've done my bit. And the officers, staff officers, had a lot more leeway to say, all right, hey, 6 months is enough. They would be required. They pretty much required everybody to do a TDY somewhere. But at some point, they ran out of warm blue badgers, and that's what they needed, contractors to go out and fill in. A lot of what I did was a lot of the TDYs I did was filling in for people to do R&R, to maybe filling in a gap while somebody else is PCSing and waiting for another person to come in. There was a lot of need for that kind of thing, short term, long term. So,
Ken, if you can you lay out for us what was going on in the Philippines 2001, 2002? It's early on in the war on terror. We're all focused on Afghanistan and the Middle East, but in Southeast Asia, there are things percolating over there that are bubbling up to the surface. There are a variety of different threat groups, and there's really a confluence of events in that part of the world that led to the rise of Islamic terrorism. There are these Saudi charities over there, ostensibly, that were stirring up all kinds of trouble. Can you paint that picture for us? What was going on in the Philippines that required the CIA's attention? Oh, we lost Ken.
We don't have your voice. Did somebody change?
Oh my gosh. Why did we lose Ken?
Did you kick something? Did you break something?
No,
Jack,
it's impossible.
What'd you touch? What'd you touch?
I really have no idea. Do you want to call him back? Sorry, guys. I did that big monologue, and then we just stopped being able to hear him. I mean, the settings didn't change in there, Dave.
Nothing changed. Ken, we're going to call you right back. Stand by. We are experiencing technical difficulties. All right, let's do this.
This is the beauty and the horror of doing this live, guys. But anyways, thanks for joining us tonight. Really appreciate it.
Oh, sorry, guys.
No, that's okay. Where is he? Ken! I still can't hear him. What in the world happened? I mean, it's like straight up and like not able to hear him at all.
Yeah.
Huh.
Sorry, guys. Anyway, so I think what Jack was saying is thank you for joining us tonight. We're going to continue. If you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please hit the subscribe button. Also, hit the little bell for notification. And I think there's an option to notify all. You might want to get that because I guess sometimes YouTube, it just picks and chooses. If you like what we're doing here and you're not on our Patreon page, the link is in the description below. Please join us on Patreon. Even $1 a month helps us out here, helps us pay our rent, and you get access to exclusive content. It's good stuff, guys. We are not only on YouTube, but we are also now on SoundCloud, iTunes, and Stitcher, just like for the Team House.
But what is going on with Skype?
How do we do sound?
Let's try again. I'll see if I'll just try audio this time, okay, Ken? Sorry, my man. Hello, Ken. I still don't hear him.
We lost audio. So
He says he can hear us. Huh. Oh, boy.
oh boy.
It's so strange.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened at all.
No, neither do I. Usually we're better than this. I'm sorry, folks.
Yeah, call him back one more time. We'll see if we can get him on. Okay,
You do these test calls and everything, and
Hey guys, can you hear me?
yes, Ken, I hear you.
Oh, all right.
Okay,
Yeah.
don't touch anything. Don't touch anything. Step away from the controls there, Dave. All right, I'm sorry, viewers, for the technical hiccup. Ken, please continue. I'm sorry about that.
No problem. No problem. Yeah. You really got to understand the political situation in the Philippines, the history, the cultures, and you also got to understand America's our involvement there. It is if in case someone might not know,
It goes back over 100 years.
Exactly. The Philippines was actually an American colony. We have not had many colonies. We have possessions: Puerto Rico, and some others. But in the Spanish-American War, we won the Philippines. We took over the Philippines as a colony, and we also inherited the political situation down south. There's about, the Philippines is made of 7,000 to 10,000 islands. Down south, in the biggest island there is Mindanao. There's and they're mostly Muslims there. The Spanish had trouble integrating the Muslims. They call them Moros, M-O-R-O. They had trouble integrating the Moros into the rest of their colony. We inherited that problem, and we the United States. If you read the history and if you look into it, it was a pretty brutal, nasty colonial war, and it really never ended. The fact is that war never ended. We gave them their independence after World War II, and the new Filipino government in Manila inherited the same problem. So you have these, it's a clash of cultures. You have the Christian Catholics against the Muslims down south. There's different cultures. There's different languages. There's a whole history that's. If you don't understand that, the whole thing just looks weird, and you think, well, it's because of Osama bin Laden. Yeah, no, it's not because of Osama bin Laden. It's not because of Gaddafi. It's this situation has been there for hundreds of years. So on 9/11, we became interested because there were Moro insurrections, the Muslim insurrections down there against the government in Manila. They're separatists. They'd been trying to create their own country. They have their own kings, their own sultans. They felt more aligned, and they still do feel more aligned with Malaysia in Borneo. Right across, just a couple hundred miles away, is Sabah, a Malaysian state, as well as an Indonesian state on Borneo. So you've got these Moros that have been fighting a war in effect for hundreds of years, never stopped. What got our attention after 9/11 was there was an American couple, the Burnhams, they're a missionary couple, had been kidnapped. The Moros had a pretty good, and if you think about it, they're almost like the mafia. You know, it's a sort of separatist, criminal, revolutionary group that was fighting, killing, but they're also committing crimes and funding all of their operations. One of their biggest operations to make money was ransom. Mm-hmm. Kidnap for ransom. They had a group led by a guy named Abu Sabaya. Abu Sabaya was trained in Libya. He was trained in Saudi, and he had a lot of connections. Had done a really it's a pretty cool raid when you look at it operationally. And he took these little banca boats up from Basilan Island up across the Sulu Sea to Palawan, and hit a diving resort and kidnapped, I can't remember, I want to say a dozen people, including the Burnhams. The Burnhams were the only Americans there. The Burnhams have been missionaries.
It happens to this day. I mean, it's still going on.
Yep, it's still going on. Yeah. So the Burnhams were missionaries. They had lived in the Philippines for many, many years. They kidnapped him in Palawan and took him back to Basilan, and on 9/11 they had been hostage. They'd been held hostage for, I want to say 6 months, 8 months, close to a year already. We become interested. That's sort of was a good reason for us to assert American interests there. We sent a task force, a joint special forces task force, to work with the Filipino military down in Zamboanga in Mindanao. They call it Southcom, Southern Command. There was so the agency had an element working with the special forces there. Did that answer your question, Jack?
Yeah, I think that sets the stage. So then tell us, your personal experience. What was it like hitting the ground in the Philippines and beginning the hunt to track down and rescue the Burnhams?
So it was like, wow, this is what my entire life I've been getting ready to do. I had a pretty unique background, set of experiences to make me to set me up for success there. I had lived and worked for many years in the Philippines. I'd never studied their languages, but I had been out and about among them. Anywhere I lived in the world, I'm not going to the 5-star Italian restaurant and getting linguine. I'm squatting in the alley eating fish and rice with my hands with them. It's just it's my interest. I like doing that kind of thing, and I'm interested, and so I learned how to get along with them really well. So here I show up on a TDY down there, and we were in. The operation was ongoing. It wasn't bearing much fruit, but it was already going. I was able to work with our local partners. Had a vast variety. I worked with I think that I probably had something like 10 to 15 different local partner organizations that I was coordinating and working with all at the same time. Pretty quickly found that there was one that was the most effective. They were all just like happens in our military and our government. You think we would all be pulling together and working as one. It doesn't happen in our situation. It doesn't happen in theirs either. So I found that one was more effective and started working really closely with the Filipino Marines. And they had turns out that they had so just FYI, this ended up. The Filipino Marines met with Mark Bowden. Mark Bowden wrote Black Hawk Down, and he went over there after this whole thing was over, met with them, and they told him the whole story. They told him my name. They told him I was ex-special forces. So he wrote this article, and then the article says, Kent Clizbe, ex-special forces. I go, dude. And he ended up calling me after he had the story. He called me and said, look, I'm gonna use your name in the story coming up, and asked for me to cooperate. So I asked the agency for permission. They said hell no. So they wouldn't let me cooperate with them. I thought it was a great idea, because what we ended up doing and what the Marines told Bowden, what Bowden reported, I thought reflected great credit on us.
It was a positive story. It was a win.
It was a win. The headquarters didn't see it that way. They saw it as a failure. I was a failure. The whole thing was a cluster, and it's just there's a lot of reasons behind that, but I think Bowden dipped into it and explored it pretty well.
When we had Ron Moeller on a few episodes back, who was with Air Branch, and he watched the Abu Sabeya raid on the drone feed, he was of the opinion that it was a rousing success as well.
Yeah.
So, Kent, tell us what your experience was. Bowden got it from the Filipinos, and I'm happy they had the opportunity to tell their story. I want to hear it from you. The Burnham rescue, tracking down Abu Sabaya, how did it really go down?
So Bowden in his article writes about it, and the Filipino Marines talk about it, and in fact they called me up about a month ago. The sticking point, and it's still a sticking point, was they had an asset. They had a human asset who was who was providing logistical support to Abu Sabaya while he was holding the hostages. Wherever he was, this guy, his name is Alvin Siglas. Alvin was, unbeknownst to Abu Sabaya, was working with our partners, and so he was providing details on where they are, what's going on. There was a 5 or 10, some multiple $1 million reward for Abu Sabaya. When this was all going on, various American organizations were trying to arrest Alvin Siglos. And there was all kinds of infighting going on back in Washington about this issue.
What were they trying to arrest him
for? Everybody in Washington, everybody in Manila was convinced that Alvin Siglos had to be arrested. Out in the field, my buddies were Alvin Siglos was the key to the kingdom.
Right.
And so that's sort of the background as to why headquarters, why Washington, why Manila saw it as a failure, because they didn't get to arrest Alvin Siglos.
Why did Washington want this guy arrested?
You got me, man. Because they don't have a freaking clue. They had no idea what was going on. They're seeing things through a lens that is not reflecting reality.
Were they trying to pin him with like material support to terrorism or something like that? I mean, was that their deal?
Yes, as well as other things. I mean, there was crazy. There was some and because of all that, so it was as if we're battling on several fronts at the same time, and battling the rear at the same time as we're trying to get the poor Burnhams free. And we had an excellent operation going, and the hounds of hell were biting us in the ass the whole time.
They were trying to arrest him or get him arrested during the operation. Like while he was providing intelligence.
Yes, yeah.
Did they realize that he was the one providing the intelligence?
That's a good question. I think they didn't believe it. I think that's probably the situation. Is they were told that, but they didn't believe it, or they didn't want to hear it, or they. There's a lot of arrogance and ignorance, and a mixture of arrogance and ignorance is really dangerous.
So how did it end up going down? I mean, how did you end up getting the Burnhams out of there? I mean, I know it was a messy operation, to say the least.
So what ended up happening was, because the Marines knew had a pretty good fix on where he was located. Then it became an internal issue among the the different organizations in the Filipino military. They're kind of jockeying for who can do this, and ultimately looking to get credit.
The Light Reaction Regiment and the Marines, I mean, I know they were competing with one another.
Yeah, so it ended up the Army Rangers I don't really know exactly what they did, but they swept through this very remote jungle where the standard operating procedure for Abu Sayyaf. The name of the organization is Abu Sayyaf. Abu Sabaya was the leader of this group. Abu Sayyaf standard operating procedure was to usually they go in pretty small groups, anything from 15 to 100 or so. But this group that was holding the Burnhams was very small, was 10 to 15. They would move pretty regularly, and they would set up a camp and set up a perimeter around the camp. And all of them had, not all of them, but there were, what is it called? Grenade launchers. They had different weapons with grenade launchers, and they carried a lot of grenades. So anytime they were in a contact with their enemy, the Filipino military, it seemed like their response was to pop off grenades, pop, 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 pop. So anytime there was a firefight, we'd always get reports back. We had contact with a force of 750, and we took we took fire. And when it's actually it's like 6 or 8 of them. But I'm laughing, but I probably would be freaked out too. I'm not a combat dude. I don't go out and shoot people, and I'm not used to people shooting at me. I'm used to being in dangerous situations. But so anyway, the army sweeps through the jungle, finds contact, had a firefight, and unfortunately, Martin, the husband, Martin Burnham, was killed in that attack. Gracia Burnham was shot in the thigh. Several of Abu Sabaya's guys were killed, 2 or 3, and that was the rescue. The army guys moved in on the position and engaged in a firefight. They were able to medevac them out and got them to Southcom pretty quickly after the battle. And Martin was DOA, and Gracia was recovered. She was shot pretty bad, but she recovered.
Can you tell me about that picture you were able to share with me of Gracia being carried across the airfield in the stretcher? Did you take that picture?
Yeah, I did. So me and the Marines were back on Southcom, kind of monitoring the whole situation, and we knew they were coming in. So I went up to meet her coming off of as the medevac came in. So that I think they dropped her off, and then a couple more came in with the wounded Rangers right after that.
That's pretty incredible.
Now,
you told me you'd been able to meet Gracia since that event, like years later.
Yeah, just a couple years ago, she came. So I live in D.C. I live in Northern Virginia. She came and did so she's still very active in her religious community. Mm-hmm. She came and did an event at a big church here, and my cousin happens to be a member there. And
oh wow,
I was able to he got me in, and so I was able to meet up with her, and we had a good talk, and so I've been in touch with her ever since then.
That's great.
But, yeah.
Now, Abu Sabaya managed to escape during that, right? Were you part of the follow-on efforts?
So him and a handful, about 5 or 6 of his guys, escaped from that battle, and I guess it probably took us another week to 2 weeks. I'd kind of lose track of time, and it was a long time ago now. Yeah, I realize now this is almost 20 years ago.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. So anyway, yes, he escaped and was on the run. And again, luckily we had Alvin. Alvin, he was Alvin was helping him out, and the Marines knew where he was thanks to Alvin. And so I guess you heard the story that what was my buddy in the air branch? I forgot his name.
Ron.
So I sat and watched the feed from the air, but we couldn't let our Filipino partners see it. So we came up with this workaround where the monitor was in this little plywood box, and we had a little window in the plywood box. So I'm looking at the monitor, and my buddy Jesse, a Filipino Marine officer, is sitting on the other side of the window, and I'm saying, "Okay, he's turning north. Jesse, he's turning north." And Jesse has like 6 cell phones and radios. Bong, he's going north. Hey, look out for that! It was a crazy situation, but we made it work.
Are you able to talk at all about how you guys were able to track down and plan that operation that ended in his death? Because talking to the Filipino Marines was very interesting. I was out at General Saban's birthday party, actually, and him and his staff, his Marine buddies, kind of unfolded the tale about how they had planned this operation in their living room with you, apparently. And there's some technical intelligence involved as far as planning beacons and tracking his whereabouts.
No comment. They have very good. They don't lie though. I've never known them to tell a lie. But
I understand if there's some things you can't talk about, Ken. I'll just tell. So I'm not under any security clearance obligations. I'll tell you what they told me, so our viewers can understand. They had attempted to capture or kill Sabaya several times, and he had gotten away. They had tried to get him in the jungle and things like this. So they finally came up with the idea every once in a while he'd get on those banca boats, the pump boats, and they figured, well, when he's out at sea, he's really got nowhere to run, right? So they concocted this operation, and they developed a human intelligence asset on the ground and said, hey, let's put a beacon on the boat itself and then do an interdiction at sea. And so there was a operation done. There were American Navy SEALs present and Filipino Navy SEALs present, the NAVSOC guys. The Bowden article also mentions a Philippine Marine asset that was involved in all of this. And I won't mention that gentleman's name, but it's a little complicated. But needless to say, they did bug the boat, and they interdicted it at sea. And now, exactly what happened at sea when they interdicted that boat, I've heard 2 or 3 different stories. Ron Moeller told the story that he saw with his own eyes on a previous episode of this show.
I was get stitched.
He said, I saw it, I was looking at the feed as it happened, and this is how it went down. So you guys can go and listen to that episode with Ron, and I think that you're going to hear some ground truth from that. When somebody comes to me like Ron and says, I saw it with my own eyes, this is how it went down, I take that very seriously. So if you want to hear, the actions on the shoot 'em up, how that went down, I think you should go and listen to, Ron and hear it from his own mouth.
Me too.
Real quick, let's do some.
Hey guys, is there any way I could take like a 2-minute break?
Absolutely, go for it.
Okay, I'll be right back. Thanks.
Guys, we're gonna answer some of these or get to some of these, and anything that pertains to Kent, we'll ask him as soon as he gets back. But I know it's been like an hour and we haven't addressed, so we apologize.
Yeah, we'll get to some viewer questions.
Okay, Alex, thank you very much. We now have 95 subscribers on the subreddit.
Cool.
If you guys have not joined the subreddit, it is r/.
The link is down in the description.
The link is down in the description. We have 95 subscribers. If you guys, that's kind of a good avenue. If you guys have questions for us, if there are things that maybe, because I don't know if you guys know this, like we don't try to ignore your chat unless you super chat. It's just that often with our guests, we go like the full time, and it's hard to kind of read and see what's going on.
We want to give them opportunities to talk and answer and elaborate.
If there are questions that you have, not in the super chat, because we always make sure we get to those, because we really appreciate the donations. But if you have questions, the subreddit is probably a good place to put them. I check in a couple times a week.
Yeah.
I think Jack does too. But that's probably a good place that we're not utilizing enough.
And also, guys, if you enjoy what we're doing, technical issues aside, I apologize again for that. Please leave a comment for us on this video.
Yeah.
Please give it the little thumbs up and all that good stuff. That really helps it as far as the algorithm, getting it spread out there. Absolutely share the video with your friends, spread it around. All that stuff really makes a difference for us. And if you are interested and you really like what we're doing, there's a link down in the description for our Patreon page, and you can take a look at that. And if you want to financially support us and help and pay the rent on the studio, that really means a lot to us as well. And
less than a cup of coffee a day,
you
can help Jack and Dave drink Lefroy and pay our rent.
It's really about just the logistical support for the studio, and we really we really appreciate all you guys joining us. And I'm really excited for next month. And I'll take this opportunity, since it came up and we're here with Kent tonight. Next week, next Friday, it is the return of Ron Moeller for episode 2, part 2 with him.
Dun, dun, dun.
Ron was an agency employee for a long time, served in the paramilitary side, a long time in Air Branch, doing logistics for the agency in Afghanistan, and he will be back on for part 2 next week. So I'm really excited to do that. And overall, March is just going to kick ass. We have an awesome lineup for next month.
Yeah. Who have a list? We'll put a tentative schedule up in the subreddit. Actually,
I'll put it up on our Patreon for the people who are the hardcores.
And mate.
The hardcores.
That's right. So let's, DJ, thank you very much for the donation. Ian, thanks for the donation, and thanks for the recommendation. So we have a couple questions for you. Alex asks, well, what was he said in the CIA, but probably in your travels, what was your favorite meal? Like what? And you said that you're not kind of a Michelin type of guy, but more of a eating with the locals. So, did you have in your travels? Did you have a favorite meal?
Malaysia is the best for food.
Oh yeah.
Malaysian food is fantastic. It's a combination of there's 3 main races in Malaysia: Malays, Chinese, and Indians, and the food is a reflection of those 3 cultures. Probably my favorite is it's called nasi lemak in Malaysia, which means creamy rice. It's rice cooked in coconut milk, and it's what we have for breakfast there. They rice cooked in coconut milk, and then you have a spoonful of it's called sambal, hot sauce.
I love sambal.
Sambal with and then sprinkled dried anchovies on it, half a boiled egg, and a couple of sliced cucumbers, and then the whole thing is packaged in a banana leaf. So that's breakfast there, and I love that.
I love sambal.
Yeah, try nasi lemak if you love sambal. It's a great use of it. And then when I go to Malaysia, I got to have nasi lemak, and then I got to have something they call ABC. ABC is air batu campur. Air batu campur, which is mixed ice. And what it is, it's a dessert. Over there, mostly kids eat it, so they always laugh when I order ABC. They laugh. What's wrong? What are you? You're not a kid, but it is great. It's shaved ice with palm sugar syrup and then they mix a bunch of different kinds of fruit.
Like jellied fruit. Yeah.
Yeah, jelly fruit and other things. The Philippines do halo-halo.
Yeah. It has the shaved ice with like milk, and there's like gummy bears and gummy worms in it. Yeah,
exactly.
The Thai do it also. It's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. So
and then,
nasi lemak and ABC.
There you go. And they also ask when you were in the CIA, like when you were going through your training or while you were there, did you have a favorite skill that you learned, or what was like was there a moment when you're like, I can't believe I'm learning this? This is so cool.
Pretty much my entire career in the agency. I would say many times I'd stop, just like when I was in the military in Monterey, and I'm pinching myself going, geez, here I'm this redneck from North Carolina. What am I doing on Cannery Row? Same thing when I was a case officer. A lot of times I just stop and say, damn, this is really cool. I can't believe they're paying me to do this. And I guess it's just the whole thing of the beauty of being a CIA operations officer is that you are out there on your own, and you're the tip of the spear. You are. They delegate a lot of not necessarily power, but you have the ability to make decisions. I don't have to stop and phone somebody or radio back to headquarters. You have to later justify what you've done, but you are empowered to do what you got to do. And you are representing the President of the United States. You are representative of the United States government.
The real question, though, is how is their health insurance? Because that's why you went.
Dude, it is excellent. we had two babies with it. Actually, on a little bit more serious note, so once I got, never mind. We'll pass on that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Forget that story.
Okay. Sorry. Ian asked, are you familiar with the Philippines arms industry? Like, if they're proficient at manufacturing, they're quite proficient at manufacturing 1911s and long-range scopes. Are you familiar at all with their arms industry?
No, I'm not. I'm not much of a gun guy. I got lots of guns, but I don't know that much about them.
Yeah,
they have.
But here, I can tell you one thing. Filipinos can make anything.
They have a indigenous arms industry, and I can't remember the name for it. It's like there's a word that's like automatopoeia for it, but they have an indigenous industry that it really came out of making 1911 clones in their garages essentially, and that continues to this day. I mean, Filipinos, like you said, they can make anything. And one thing you definitely never want to mess with also is a Filipino with a knife in their hand. Yeah,
I love Filipinos. They're my buddies.
Yeah. Great calamari too, lumpia. Any old stories about Japanese gold in the Philippines and Black Eagle Trust?
So I was just taking my break. I was thinking I wanted to point something out to y'all that this is this talking about the whole Abu Sabaya operation. It is a great case study in the value of human intelligence compared to other intelligence, like signals intelligence.
Right.
So. So the Japanese gold, how does that tie in? So you're constantly getting reports. There's all kinds of things in the air. People talking about stuff, whether it's on phones, on radios. You're constantly hearing all these reports. When we were trying to find Abu Sabaya, literally there would be dozens of reports. Abu Sabaya is shot in the left testicle, and he has gone to his cousin's house in Cebu to have the testicle removed. You'd get that report. Another report. Abu Sabaya has taken a third wife and gone back to Libya. You get another report. And just wild reports.
The gossip. Yeah.
In effect. So, but if it goes on the air, it becomes intel.
Right.
So you get intel that has
the chatter.
Abu's. Yeah, but you know that I always hear people talk about chatter, but it comes out as intel. You know, you get reports of here is this is an intel report. Abu Sabaya's right testicle has been wounded, and literally dozens of those. Same thing with the Japanese gold. In the southern Philippines, they've never stopped talking about the Japanese hid gold as they were retreating, as we took them back over. So yeah, there's constantly stories about Japanese gold.
If
and people
any of you out there are interested in that story, there's a book called Gold Warriors, written by Sterling Seagrave. Very, very interesting. And I don't know if it's true or not, but it is about that entire story. So allegedly, when the Japanese took over huge swaths of Manchuria, Southeast Asia, they're all over the place, they stole the gold from all the families. Gold was how you stored wealth before modern banking, right? So they hoarded all the gold from all the places that they plundered, all the you guys are probably familiar with like the rape of Nanking, these horrible things that happened. They took all the gold. They were bringing it back to Japan. They got it as far as the Philippines before the United States really came in and started dropping the hammer. So the gold got stranded in the Philippines. And allegedly, this gold was just cached and hidden in like mines and under trees and hidden in holes. And that's what Ken's talking about, that there's treasure hunters like to this day of people out there looking for Yamashito's gold.
Has anybody ever found one scratch of it?
Sterling Seagrave alleges that the United States found it, that like MacArthur's intel boys found it, and it was used to for like off the books intel operations to buy off the governments of Greece and Italy, keep them out of the hands of the communists during the early years of the Cold War. Now again, if that's true, I don't know. But the book is about that. People can read that if they're interested.
Sounds cool.
And let's see, I think that's about it. We've come back with the Marcos family and Filipino politics. Do you have any position or insight? Or?
I was at Clark when Marcos imposed martial law. That was pretty interesting back then. The whole the politics in Manila is Philippines is more a Latin American country than it is an Asian country, and it's the things that happen in the Philippines could happen in Peru or Venezuela or Guatemala.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And I could go on and on about colonial
and
stuff,
the Philippines is awesome.
They're right out.
And the Filipino people are awesome. I love that place.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a fascinating place.
So, Ken, after Abu Sabaya goes to sleep with the fishes, what was the rest of your Philippine adventure like?
I left. That happened at like probably 2 a.m. I was on a plane out at 7 the next 4 hours later. I had extended so many times, and I had to leave. So that was it. That was my last stop there. But I ended up working in Indonesia and Malaysia a lot.
Are you able to talk about that at all?
Not so much. It was a hunt for Hambali, the Bali bombers, the guys, the JI, Jamaat Islamiyah, based in Indonesia. Yeah. They did the bombing in Bali. I was sitting in a police station in Jakarta when they hit the Australian embassy. I was supposed to have been at a meeting at the Australian embassy when that bombing happened. I was in Jakarta when they bombed the Marriott. So I was working on the hunt for Hambali as well.
Those were, I assume, like liaison operations.
We have a lot of partners.
And what did become of the Bali bombers? Were the local forces able to track them down?
So Hambali, the name of the leader of JI, of the Southeast Asia, the Indonesian, Malaysian cell of JI was Hambali. And yeah, we caught him. He's in prison now.
In Indonesia?
I don't believe so. I think we have him.
Oh, really?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, that's all I know.
Well, as you said, it's good to have partners.
Yep, really good. Yeah, so they caught a lot of those guys. They had a lot of battles with them, and there was a lot of casualties, but they did arrest many of them, and they tried. There's a handful of folks that were tried in Indonesia and are in prison now in Indonesia.
So, within short order, though, I mean, you must have found yourself, because of the timeline, in this liaison position in Iraq and Kuwait.
Yep. So I stopped doing the CT work, which was going from CT op to CT op, wherever there was something happening.
CT is counter-terrorism.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes.
Please go ahead.
Sorry about that.
No, you're fine. I just, for our guests who aren't quite as familiar.
Yeah. So this was as the so 9/11, global war on terror, invasion of Afghanistan. We still have things happening in Southeast Asia, but now the next big thing was Iraq. The Bush administration started looking at Iraq and saying, something ain't right there, and we started building up. So a big demand that, as we talked about before, there weren't enough staff officers to cover was military liaison stuff. So I started doing that. I started as a cadre officer. I started doing military liaison, and the big need then was the build up in Kuwait as we were getting ready. We ended up invading Iraq. At the time, of course, we didn't know we were going to invade Iraq, but it was everybody had a pretty good idea. So I went in as just before. I'm really bad at dates, but I ended up leaving, I think, a month before we invaded. But I was the agency rep to the coalition ground forces commander there in Kuwait as we were getting ready.
So I think that, and we're going to have Greg Walker to come on and talk about this again, because we didn't even get into his time in Iraq. But I think as the agency rep to coalition ground forces, I think one of the things we really need to talk about is the WMDs issue.
Yeah.
The justification for us invading Iraq. What happened? Well, I mean, what happened there from your perspective?
What's the deal? What? No,
no, really. I mean, it's kind of, from your perspective, what was the deal?
So it was pretty clear that we intended to invade Iraq. It was maybe a war in search of a justification. Mm-hmm. Saddam Hussein was constantly violating agreements, constantly. There was no-fly zones. There was I can't even remember all of the various agreements that he was breaking, but my personal opinion is that the WMD thing was overblown.
Yeah.
At the time, it was. I don't think that anybody could have said for sure that no, there's no WMD in there. There's no, he doesn't have any. He acted like he had it. He acted like he was hiding something. He wasn't cooperating. He was he was doing other things he shouldn't have. I mean, personally, I don't think we should have invaded. As I was sitting there with the military intel guys, in the run up, I sat down and I drew a map of Iraq. And I said, guys, in 7 years after we invade, this is what's going to look like. And I divided it in 3. I said, you're going to have Kurdistan, you're going to have Shiistan, and you're going to have Greater Jordan,
Sunni Arabia.
yeah, Sunni Arabia, yeah. And it was obvious that Saddam was the glue that held the country together.
Right.
Iraq is not a natural country. Iraq is pieces of other natural countries.
Right.
That it goes back to World War I that we screwed it up. Well, the Brits and the French screwed it up.
Yeah, he was basically the Tito of the area, keeping everything together by force.
Exactly.
And
when that force is gone, it's gonna explode, and it did. But I think that it was preordained. We were going to invade that country regardless. I think that with Intel, you never know. It's always gray, and it can be interpreted many different ways. Did some people twist, change, exaggerate? Yeah, probably, but yeah.
Well, it's like on the president's daily brief, as I've understood it. When the CIA briefs the president and it has those bullet points, there's like a percentage, like we're like 95% sure this is true. We're like 50-50 on this issue. Isn't that how it works? I mean, nothing is ever 100%, right?
Yeah, but you're absolutely right. But God bless analysts. But I don't think those numbers mean nothing. It's just a shot in the dark. They're just trying to sound good, saying what they're saying. I mean, if they could predict the future, they wouldn't be writing reports to go in the PDB. They'd be buying stocks or going to the frickin' track.
I mean, I can't speak to that because I wasn't there, but I mean, there does have to be some element of that. The agency wants to hedge their bets, right? Nobody wants to say we're 100% sure this is true.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't think there was any 100%. There was nothing that was an absolute slam dunk. There was nothing that was 100% negative either. It was a war looking for a justification, and we found one.
I don't know. We had the chief UNESCO weapons inspector on who said that even during the Clinton administration, that they were trying to
remove Saddam, if not start a war.
Yeah, if not start a war. So, I mean, I think that when you phrase it like that, a war looking for a justification, it seems as though that has been sort of
the policy.
No particular president, but I think the people, the upper echelon people that have sort of traveled along with that, that had been their goal for a while. It seems,
Yep, I agree.
Yeah.
So what were you seeing, Ken, from that position? I'm just interested in your experience from this liaison job. You must have had a front seat ride to the invasion, watching it from a fairly high level.
Yeah, I left a month before we went in, so
Okay.
I did not see the invasion. I saw the run up to it. I was there as things were getting hot, So yeah, there was little action. I think the Iraqis attacked a small island off the coast. There's some Marines were going swimming or something. The Iraqis shot at them. That was as hot as it got before I left.
And then you had also shared with me some pictures of some of the stuff you were doing in West Africa that I thought was interesting. There's the one where you were wearing the African garb and you had the little Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about some of those jobs that you're doing over there?
It's all the counter-terrorism stuff. We have partners all around the world that have things going on in their countries, and they need help, advice, training, support, and as the designated hitter in the cadre, that's what I did a lot of. I worked with various groups like that all around the world. I mean, in kind of the places that nobody wanted to go. That's where there was no shortage of volunteers to go to Rome to work on counterterrorism issues, or London,
to do the embassy
or
circuit,
Stockholm. But West Africa, Java, Borneo, not a lot of people wanted to go to those places. So,
how would you describe, West Africa then from a counterterrorism perspective? Because when you were going there, it was not on the radar so much from the public's perspective, but the last couple of years, from Uganda to Niger, I think there's been a lot more focus on what's going on in Africa.
So, just like the Philippines, you got to look at the history, and I think that right after 9/11, we probably should have been involved in these kind of things. Should have been at least checking out, being sure that that things were settled. But bottom line is, West Africa is rife with regional, ethnic, tribal, historical, colonial, all kinds of these conflicts and disagreements and little wars, and there's all kinds of things going on that it ain't none of our business. Now, here's 20 years after 9/11. Those people have been fighting and killing each other. In whether it's in Syria, in Kurdistan, in Iraq, in Mindanao, in Mali, they've been fighting and killing each other, and in effect, civil wars, if not regional wars, for thousands of years.
So why are we there, Kent?
Now?
GWAT era, from your time to today?
Well, GWAT, right after 9/11, I think that we did the right thing in going and at least monitoring, having a presence there, working with the locals and finding out, hey guys, what's up? Who are these folks? Who are those folks out in the boonies? What are they up to? And that was right. That's what we should have done. 20 years later, in my opinion, we shouldn't be involved in any of these regional conflicts. We should be paying attention, but we should not have boots on the ground. We should not be droning. We should not be bombing. We should let them. It's their war. Let them fight it.
You don't think there is a at-risk population and the potential for the Sahel to become, I hate to use a cliched term like terrorist breeding ground, but let's just say a safe haven for terrorism like Afghanistan was up until, 2001?
Maybe. There's plenty of places that have that potential. Mm-hmm. And we should not, the United States, I don't believe, should be the world's police making the world safe for what? I mean, we're worried that it's going to become a place that bad people hang out. There's a lot of bad people in the world. It's never going to end if you do that. I believe we should aggressively go after American interests.
Yeah.
And American interests are not the safety of the world. There's any bad people, we've got to take them on. If you start thinking like that, you start seeing. If you start thinking like we should be worried about a place becoming a terrorist safe haven, look at all the places we should be in. Then,
right?
The list never ends. Yeah, well, I'll tell you one place that fascinates me that nobody ever talks about that is a terrorist safe haven. It's a terrorist safe haven. There's genocide going on. There is horrible civil rights, human rights violations. It's the South Sudan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
South Sudan is the world's newest country, they call it.
Yeah.
The United States and Israel got together and forced South Sudan off of Sudan and created a Christian country. From the day that it began, the South Sudanese have been genociding each other. It's tribal, it's religious, they're all Christian, they're different sects of Christianity, they're different tribes. They've been massacring each other since the first day that the country existed.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that the reason they did that is because there was so much violence against the Christians, and then they're like, "Oh, we can fix this," not realizing that they're just exacerbating the problem. You know?
Exactly. I mean, that's so we got involved in that, and what was the result? Oh, the one of the worst genocides in the world.
Right.
So what do? Well, let's pretend it's not happening. Just plug our ears and say, "Oh, South Sudan, where's that? I don't know."
That's
we were complicit in creating that country.
Right.
And
good intentions paved the way to hell, right? I mean,
exactly.
Jack and I talk about this, quite a bit, that the United States, and it's not the Democrats, it's not the Republicans, it's just United States policy is very myopic. We don't have a clear view of the rest of the world and how things are on a daily basis for them. So, we think that we can just, look, everybody wants to live this way, or everybody wants to be like this, and
it's also very schizophrenic, where it's like, we're all in with you today, now we're pulling back, going back and forth. H.K. Roy talked about that in regards to the Balkans on a past episode. I know we've talked about it in regards to Iraq and Syria many times.
I mean, the Kurds,
the Kurds, great example.
Here, America is often kind of here today, gone tomorrow because of our shifting policy and the idea that we're supposed, we want to be the good guys, and some of these conflicts, there is no good guy. There just is no good guy on either side sometimes.
Yep. I mean, bottom line is that we should not be involving ourselves in civil and regional wars around the world, and they're always justified. There's always some kind of justification.
Sure.
Children are being killed or whatever. They're raping the rainforest or something. So we'll go in and, George Carlin back in the 70s said, talking about Vietnam, he says, we'll go in and whip a little democracy on them. Yeah. That'll teach them.
Well, and that's the thing is the media, I think is complicit in that, today's cause, right? The media will talk about a situation in a country, and all of a sudden it is everywhere, and everybody's an instant expert on it. And why haven't we been doing this? I'm like, next week nobody remembers that. Nobody knows. It can get frustrating at times.
Yeah. I mean, our foreign policy should be America first, American interests first, and if there's no and we got to define what American interests means. Mm-hmm. And American interest does not mean that there are girls in the country who don't have a girls' school, or American interests are not. So human rights or something like that. Unfortunately, we cannot be the human rights arbiters of the world, because every time we have gone into a country to enforce human rights, we've caused huge violations of human rights. South Sudan's perfect. A genocide, millions, hundreds of thousands of people massacred. Mm-hmm. Because we went in because of human rights. Right. So human rights can't be a reason that America projects power. Right. We need to focus on our own country, to look at what is an actual threat to our country, and to protect our country, and unfortunately let the rest of the world hash things out. If they send somebody over to bomb us, by golly, we'll go take care of them. We'll take care of them. We don't need to be there 20 years later.
Right. We talk about the media's influence in, in sort of our involvement in the world and things like that. You've had some interesting experiences with the media and with their experts, the people who kind of are driving policy, right? Because they say something to the public takes it on board, the public pushes the politicians. So it's this really weird sort of cycle of what motivates our politicians to do things. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience, or a lot about your experience in the media's so-called experts at times?
That reminds me of a story.
Really? Does it?
There was funny you should mention that. For 13 years, Fox News had one of their premier counter-terrorism, Islamic extremism, intelligence analysts was a CIA officer by the name of Wayne Simmons. God bless Wayne. I wish him all the best in the world. I kind of, it's kind of pitiful what happened. But for 13 years, Wayne held himself out as an expert in all things intel, counterterrorism, Islamic extremism. I haven't had cable TV for 35 years, so I didn't have Fox News, so I'd never seen Wayne. A mutual friend decided, I'm guessing must have been 2013 or so. I'm bad at dates, so I don't know. It was sometime after I'd stopped traveling. I was working in D.C., and a mutual friend said, "You've got to meet Wayne. Wayne is so cool. He's got so much going on. He's on Fox News. He's just like you. He's a former CIA guy, did counterterrorism." I said, "Sure, yeah, I'd be happy to meet him." Never heard the name, which is uncommon. Ron, you guys, the Air Branch guy, his name didn't ring a bell with me at all, but I saw his picture. I know that guy. I remember him. So I remember faces. I don't remember names. But I never heard Wayne Simmons' name, but that didn't mean anything. So met Wayne, got together at the Baltimore airport as he was headed out somewhere on his important intel media missions, and had a chance to have lunch with him. Wayne immediately starts talking about, I was doing some
high-speed narcotics. You know how it is, Kent. We took down like 6 tons of cocaine, and yeah, that's the way it is in the CIA, Kent, right? I was going, within 2 minutes, I knew this dude is a total fraud. I have no idea what he's talking about. The CIA doesn't do the things he's talking about. Maybe he's confused. Maybe he thought he was working for the CIA, but he didn't. I don't know, but I don't want whatever it is he's selling. So I had my lunch, didn't say anything, had finished lunch, and said, "Yeah, keep in touch, man." And that was it. And then after I met him, I went and started vetting, started looking, what the hell is this? And found all of these videos of him on Fox News. And for 13 years, it turns out, he had been one of their go-to guys for commentary on Islamic terrorism, on counter-terrorism, on
telling tough guy stories.
Huh?
Telling a lot of tough guy stories.
Yeah, he was always a tough guy. He was, Sharia's going to take over the world, and they're coming for your wives and daughters, and we got to kill them now, and war, and when I was in the agency, blah, blah, blah. And it was, the whole thing was ludicrous, and I started wondering, am I missing something here? So I started reaching out to my old buddies and saying, "Hey guys, did y'all know this Wayne Simmons dude?" And everybody's like, "No, I never heard of him. I see him all the time, but I just figured he worked somewhere that I didn't know."
Yeah.
That was the response from everybody I talked to. I ended up I took it personally. Number one, what I take personally, since I've been an adult, I don't get angry at anything, except if somebody tries to play me for a fool. Mm-hmm. If you try to play me for a fool, that pisses me off. and he tried to play me for a fool right in front of my face, sitting across from me, trying to think that I was gonna believe him, this crock of shit story he's telling.
It's quite a bit of audacity, isn't it? It's quite a bit of audacity, isn't it?
Huge audacity. Yeah. But so bottom line is, he had a con going. He was conning the Fox News, the entire nation, everybody who watched Fox News that saw him. He was conning them all. And it takes a good con man has to be audacious. Yeah. Bernie Madoff. Bernie Madoff is a perfect example.
Yeah.
He was in everybody's face. He was everywhere. He was the best finance mind ever. And he never made one investment. He was just taking people's money and putting it in a savings account.
Let me ask you that, then, Ken. If Wayne Simmons is not CIA, if he is not a part of so-called outside paramilitary operations, I'm doing the scare quotes with my fingers. If he is not that, then who is Wayne Simmons? Who is this guy?
So I wish I could answer that. I'll give you my hypothesis, but I can tell you I don't know. I don't know who he is, and I think it would be really, really difficult to get to the bottom of it. Mm-hmm. That said, I'll tell you my hypothesis. After hearing his stories, vetting him, looking back at everything he's done and said, looking at the when he was sentenced. So he was found guilty of, I think they call it major fraud against the U.S. government, which means he lied on his security clearance forms. He claimed he got a job. He got a couple jobs as a contractor, and filled out security clearance forms, claiming that he worked for the CIA, and the CIA says he never worked for us. So he was found guilty of that, and he was found guilty of a real estate fraud against a friend of his. I don't know I don't know the details, but
when DOJ moved in, yeah.
Okay, so he that's what Simmons was found guilty of, and he went to prison, and he got out recently, and I hope he can find peace. However, I believe based on when he was sentenced, he had been talking for a long time about his deep black ops, and I've got files in case anything happens to me. I've got operational files, and which anybody who's been in the CIA knows that right there tells you immediately that he's full of shit. Because no, you don't carry around personal operational files. So, right. But okay, that this is his story, and it was always his. He acted like it was his ace in the hole. You know, if you ever mess with me, I've got files. So after he was convicted, I guess it was probably when they were getting ready to sentence him, he submitted his files to the court, and you can find those online somewhere now. But those are another data point that supports my hypothesis to answer your question of who was Wayne Simmons. All of his ops were drug related in the United States. And almost. He had one where he was doing something in Kazakhstan. Yeah. I think he did travel to Kazakhstan. But it was for somebody in the United States. That's the way that he cast it was, and it probably had something to do with drugs. I think I don't think he's making this up out of whole cloth. I don't think this is just a fantasy world Wayne lived in, because he has a long history of drug arrests, of arrests,
of him being arrested, not of him slapping cuffs on people.
Yeah. He has a rap sheet of felony arrests of him for drug offenses, weapons offenses, assaults. I don't remember, and I may be wrong. Maybe it wasn't assaults. I don't remember. It was a long rap sheet of arrests that he was, and DUIs. He had something like a large number of DUIs. He was seldom convicted, and he never served time. So all of these data points, you put them together, and it sounds to me like this guy was some kind of asset of a law enforcement organization. It could have been a city. It could have been a county. It could have been state. It could have been federal. I don't know. But I believe that he was a law enforcement asset, and maybe somebody at some point in running these law enforcement operations might have said to him, Wayne, what we're doing here is just like the CIA.
Right.
I just kind of that's my I have really immersed myself in his history, and I think that's probably what happened. And once that got planted, it was I'm in CIA.
And like in his, I mean, it is a fraud, but in his mind, he may very well believe that he was working for so-called outside paramilitary operations for the CIA.
Well,
maybe.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he thought he was an asset, but I think even with that, he may have exaggerated. You know what I mean? Like I don't think that he was just I believe this is what I'm doing. You know, I believe to my core this is what I'm doing. It's like, you know what? Now.
It's a lot cooler to say I was a double knot spy for the CIA than
Hey, you know what?
As
I've
a
been
snitch.
working for the county for the last 20 years as a snitch.
Yeah.
I'm a narc.
You know,
You ain't gonna get on Fox News with that.
whenever like one soft guy comes across another soft guy, there's generally like a sniff test, right? It's
Yep.
you know, and depending on the person's experience, like a ranger without a whole lot of time might not know the right questions to ask, like an SF guy or a SEAL or you know, or vice versa, whatever. But the more time you have in those communities, the more you become familiar with it, the easier it is to do those sniff tests. For you, are there similar things like when you meet somebody, you know, it's like there are basics.
Yes,
There
yes,
are
absolutely.
essentials.
So first, Wayne did not claim that he was an asset. Especially, he's gone through a whole various flavors of the story. He started out being a staff officer of the CIA. He would call himself an operative.
Mm-hmm.
He would call himself a lot of different things. I ended up confronting him with. I wrote an article that laid out who he was and what his claims were, and my analysis and my, I was exposing him as a fraud. And when I shared that with him before I went to publish it, and his first response was, "Okay, yeah, you're right. I will never put myself out as a CIA officer
And you
again."
shared that message with me. I read that today. Yeah.
Great. So the next day, after he thought about it and probably talked to his buddies, so he has powerful friends. He has
Correct.
powerful friends and family, and I believe after he had time to digest that, he came back and upped the ante and said, not only was I a CIA officer for 30 years or 27 or something like that, I was a NOC. I was a non-officially covered operations
And
officer.
that veers them off the I'm super top secret, so you can't find anything out about me.
Maybe in his mind he thought that.
Right.
So what I'm getting around to answer your question is you got to know the what he was claiming first. So is there a way for CIA officers to vet each other? Is there a sniff test? Yes, absolutely. Even if you were a NOC, there are things. You're still a government employee. I tell people, who want to join the CIA, I say, yeah, it's one of the the best jobs in the world. It's still a government bureaucracy, and it's run a lot like the Department of Agriculture.
The post office.
Or the post office. You cannot have a government bureaucracy without, they call it employee identification number. Every CIA employee has a employee identification number. Every CIA employee has benefit issues, whether it's health insurance, which is really good, by the way.
Hey, if you guys are looking for good health insurance, you know where to go.
Health insurance, retirement. When you're a NOC, you have an inside officer who is coming out and meeting you. He's your lifeline to the bureaucracy. He becomes your best friend. Mm-hmm. So if you meet a NOC, later a retired NOC, he's going to remember every single one of his inside officers. Oh, George, I remember George. Well, he was so great. That time when my kid got really sick and we had to ask for a medevac flight, George helped us out. He'll remember his inside officer forever. So for every single, if you're a CIA officer, there are sniff tests. There are bits of information, details, documents that you would have. Even any CIA employee is eligible for exceptional performance awards, no matter where you're working, and you'll get those.
And if you're covert and you can't take it home, they'll show it to you and put it in your file.
Mm-hmm.
So there's all kinds of things that when you meet a CIA person, that if you want to vet them, there are many bits of information that you can that will prove or disprove who they are.
Now, Kent, what if he was in the part of the CIA that was so secret that not even you know about it? Like, we're talking MK Ultra.
Majestic 12 Illuminati level. Yeah.
So I can tell you, I definitely don't know everything that the agency is doing or has done, and I don't want to know it. I want nothing to do with it. That said, if someone is a CIA officer, they are going to be able to explain their training. They're going to be able to, there's many different flavors of training, even if you're on the highest level. Well, let's put it this way. First, if you are on the MK, whatever you just said, you're not going to talk about it. If you're super double not top secret dark ops, you ain't going to be on Fox News shouting it out from the rooftop.
Yep.
That's the immediate dead giveaway. Is that if there was such a thing, and there isn't, there is no such thing as that.
No Omega Force or Ultra Force, Omega Force, the Majestic 12 fly. Omega Force.
If there is, you wouldn't be on Fox News if it's so secret. That's number one. Number two is every CIA employee, regardless of your mega ultra force or knock or covert or overt, you sign a secrecy agreement to get access to classified information. Excuse me. You sign a secrecy agreement. It's a pre-publication agreement. You agree that anything that you ever publish you will submit it for clearance by the CIA's Publication Review Board. Wayne has written a couple really wild books. None of them, as far as and when the Publication Review Board reviews your stuff, they'll give you a statement and they'll tell you this needs to be put on the front matter of your book. And it says the CIA Publication Review Board has reviewed this and finds no classified blah, blah, blah. It's like 2 or 3 sentences that they require to be included. None of those are in Wayne's books.
That's interesting.
Kent, one thing I want to point out with this is, on one hand, it's like, this is a CIA stolen valor and we poke fun at it. But on the other hand, this guy, as you said, he went on Fox News for 13 years playing the role as Warhawk, talking about, how we need to be aggressive and violent and go to war with various parts of the world. And also, he obtained U.S. government contracts using these false credentials, didn't he?
And was part of government programs.
He was part of the human terrain team, I believe it was, for a little while.
Yeah.
And it's really a indictment on the intelligence community and on our government in general that they do not vet these people as vigorously as they should. That this person was able to, he went down to Guantanamo Bay. He was part of, that's a whole other issue. He was part of the military analyst program. Mm-hmm. Can you speak to that, Kent?
Yeah, there's a couple issues there.
Yeah.
So the military analyst program was started by the Bush administration to get journalists access right after 9/11, as the war was really kicking off. There was the program. The idea was to get journalists access to that they normally wouldn't have. Generally speaking, it appears that they chose journalists who would be on their side, who were more likely to agree with them. Wayne ended up
mean, he went at least on one of those trips, and it's funny that he uses that trip as as his bona fides.
Yeah.
It's the first thing that he provided me was the manifest from his trip to Guantanamo. Was when I asked him, show me something that says you're CIA, Wayne. Show me a copy of a badge. Show me a copy of an exceptional performance award. What's your employee identification number? He said, "Oh yeah, I'll get it right to you." And he emails me the manifest from a military aircraft for the military analyst program that he went on a trip there. So I believe that, you say it's an indictment of the intel community, and yes, I believe that it is. What shocked me was that I was the only one who started, who kind of went on a crusade to put an end to this.
Why wasn't the CIA out there years previously saying, "Hey, this is bullshit"?
So the CIA will not do that.
Yeah,
because
I think that's
there's
the
a lot of
challenge,
reasons why, and many of them are valid.
Right.
But some aren't. Some aren't. At a certain point, you got to be like, "Hey, this guy doesn't speak for us."
Yeah. I mean, you would think so. That's a very hairy question. If you really start thinking about it, are you with me?
I'm with you. It puts them in a bind because all of a sudden the things like that can be used as a means to uncover people.
You don't want to get into the business of confirming and denying,
right?
And I understand that, but as you said, this is a Fox News commentator claiming he was CIA, and he's speaking with those three initials, that acronym after his name, saying all kinds of crazy things. Yeah. Is it really a breach of the agency's operational security or sources and methods to say, "Hey, this guy here, Wayne Simmons, never worked for us"?
Yeah, you would think so. I ended up contacting him in the course of my, following this up, and once I had, especially once I got him to, he confessed that he wasn't, which he immediately took back. But once I got to that point where I was confident that I was correct in my analysis, I did reach out to the agency in many different ways, back channels and a lot of different ways, and they were not interested in participating. So rewind just a little bit on the military analyst thing. So I believe that the way that it appears, the way that he established his bona fides was through the military. The military works closely with the CIA, but generally speaking, does not understand the CIA. There's a lot of misunderstandings and assumptions. Wayne was able. He skated in on that through that open gate. However, he also
had
had
military contact that he sold on it. Is that what you mean?
Wait, say that again.
That he had somebody high ranking in the military, or he met somebody in the military and he sold them on it and they slid him in. Okay.
Yes, that's it. So I believe that, and I don't know this for a fact. This is just my analysis, my analytical conclusion, is that he had a high level sponsor. Mm-hmm. And I believe it was the highest level sponsor.
Well, there's pictures of him shaking hands with Don Rumsfeld.
So his sister was Don Rumsfeld's assistant secretary of, I want to say admin, some kind of admin role. Mm-hmm. She had followed him from assignment to assignment, and when he became Secretary of Defense, she ended up being assistant secretary. By this time,
when she had that position, Wayne had been busted for drugs. He was out and about, well known in his neighborhood. He lived in Annapolis. Many people, I've spoken with many sources in Annapolis who said, yeah, that dude was wide open. He was scary. There was bad shit going on.
I mean, he did interviews where he's so drunk he's slurring his words. And I mean, I say this, 2 whiskeys deep right now.
Yeah. No comment. All I know
appeared to be that drunk.
I can tell you that people in his neighborhood, in where he lived, knew him to have troubles with the law. His family knew that he had trouble with the law. So again, my analytical conclusion is his family cares about him.
Sure.
And his family saw he needed help. His family had heard him talking about he had done some kind of, high-level deep stuff.
And gave him the assist.
Family said, hey, boss, my brother, he's done some high-level stuff for intelligence agencies. Let me introduce you to him. And because that person is very... is doing a great job and helping out this high-level military guy, he says sure, and I believe that was that's how he got his foot in the door. Wow. And so once I started following this up, and you mentioned stolen valor, I started contacting. There's a bunch of folks out here. The guy that started the whole stolen valor thing for special forces, I can't remember his name. He's down in Virginia Beach. Maybe he was a SEAL, I believe. But I started talking to all of them.
He's talking about Shipley.
Yeah.
Probably, yeah. That sounds familiar. And I'd contact them. They were interested. My idea was, we really should have like a parallel operation to identify these intelligence community stolen valor guys. Mm-hmm. So, and here's a great first case study. So right. I would talk to these military stolen valor guys, and they'd say, "Yeah, cool, that's great. Let's go for it. Give me the details." So I'd send them the details, and then they would either go silent, or if I heard from them, they would be, "He is who he says he is. Stop."
Really?
Oh yeah. So they were doing some kind of vetting. They were calling their buddy who's a general in the Pentagon.
Who is that coming from?
What's that?
Who is that coming from, though?
What?
That they were saying they're trying to shut it down.
I talked to every stolen valor organization, everyone.
Because you talked to me, and I said that guy's bullshit.
Okay, yeah, but I'm talking about stolen valor organization.
Yeah,
I was talking to them. They would say, "Yeah, let's do it." I would send them the information, and they would come back, and every one of them said, one guy was in Fort Bragg. I can't remember his name. I've got all the details somewhere. But when I sent it to him, he was all hot. Yeah, this is great. Yeah, let's do this. Then he wouldn't take my calls. He wouldn't answer my phone calls. I finally got through to him, and I got through to him. He says, "Dude, I checked. He's real. He is who he says he is. Leave him alone."
Wow.
But see, the thing is that, again, it's a trust-based system, right? Because he doesn't have access to that information. He is reaching out to people who are reaching out to people who are reaching out to people.
And a lot of these army guys, like everything that is CIA is like in this big black hole, and it's like, they're doing something so secret squirrel and black ops that like we can't even imagine what it possibly is.
Right.
Yes.
They don't understand what Kent said. It's another government bureaucracy.
Right. And the thing is if a general sees or a colonel sees that Rumsfeld has signed off on this guy, then they're going to assume that the guy's legit.
And they're going to assume he's legit, and they're going to be scared shitless. Right. I am not going to cross him. Right. He's good. He's good. Stop right there. Don't want to talk anymore about it. Next. From those responses, that's what it was clear to me that there was some very high, very, very high level. Somebody was vouching for him.
Right. So, Ken, you were spot on with this very early on. I found out through my sources when I started asking questions, because I was told Wayne Simmons is a knock. He did all this high-speed stuff, and I consulted some people and found out also it was bullshit. And friends of mine, like Ian Scotto, came to me. Should we book this guy to be on the radio and so forth? Because he was working at Sirius at the time, and I was like, no, dude, he's bullshit. Yeah. A couple of years later, DOJ moves in, and they arrest Wayne Simmons on some of the charges we had talked about. And I mean, to finish out this story, Kent, I mean, what was the ultimate fall of Wayne Simmons?
I mean, I don't know how the FBI got onto him, but they got onto him. They finally took it up, and they realized that going on Fox News and lying about being the CIA is not against the law. Falsifying security clearance information application is against the law.
Getting government contracts under false pretenses against the law too.
Exactly. Yeah. Which is, I mean, it all goes back to claiming who you were, experience that you didn't have on your security clearance form. Yeah. But yeah, exactly. Major fraud against the U.S. government. So that's, I'm not really sure how, I really don't know how the FBI got onto it. I did cooperate with them. They ended up calling me up, and I shared my information with them.
Maybe the CIA really did finally get fed up with them.
No.
You don't think so?
I know so. I know not.
Yeah, I mean, why would they really care? They don't.
They don't.
They don't. Like, people are going to think what they think about the CIA regardless. So I don't think. I mean, I don't know, but
it's interesting because for people like me and Dave, right? You can check up and see if we were really in Ranger Battalion. You can check up, see if I really have a Special Forces tab. You can check up, call to Ranger School, see if we got Ranger tabs.
Well, what about the guys who were in units so secret that their records won't show any of those schools?
These hands are rated E for everybody, Dave. Don't make me use them.
Guys, that never happens. Even
if secret sniper school?
Even if a person is in a class, in a special missions unit that won't, their schools will still be listed, or some variant of the school.
Right. Anyone who says they went to the secret,
the secret Halo school.
Yeah, it's bullshit. But my point is, for us, for military guys, you can check up and see if we really did those things. But if you were the CIA, there's this mysticism towards it. And of course, for the reasons we talked about, the agency doesn't want to get into the business of confirming and denying.
Right.
Which is understandable for their own, operational security. But that was the fall of Wayne Simmons. I mean, that was pretty incredible how all of that went down, and that he was able to perpetrate that as long as he did.
And, and I guess that people, depending on how you felt about Rumsfeld, depending on how you feel about Fox, depending on all these things that you could say.
Rumsfeld wrote a blurb for Wayne Simmons' novel.
Right. Well, and the thing is that, is it an indictment of Rumsfeld? Is it an indictment of Fox? Maybe, but it's also just sort of an indictment of
the entire system.
Sort of the whole system. Because anybody could have not fallen for it. But, I mean, just recently there was the person, or not recently, but a couple of years ago, the person who started the, is it Protest Now or Protest Forward, Demonstrate Now, whatever it was. But they made up this fake company where they were allegedly hired out to demonstrate against, bring in 1,000 protesters, paying them X amount of dollars a month to protest against Trump. And they were paid. And they went on almost every major media, and people are interviewing like, this is really what you do. And it wasn't until I think they got to Neil Cavuto, it was like, we checked you out. Your website's fake. You just set it up. You know, like all this. It's just, you know.
I'll just to round that out.
Yeah, sorry, it's a tangent. It's a tangent, but
I have appeared on most of the major news channels over the years. I have been quoted in a lot of newspapers. In all of those years, the last 10 years since I've been out of the military, I have only had one journalist ask to see my Q course graduation certificate, my, DD-214. There was a guy at the Wall Street Journal, a young guy, wanted to, he's like, my editor's asking me for this. I'm sorry, man. I got to ask you. I was like, don't apologize. You're right to ask for this. Yeah. And I provided it for him. But that's it. I mean, of all those appearances, I've been on CNN, Fox, I've been on BBC. It was that one kid at the Wall Street Journal that was the only time they ever asked to see any real credentials.
And the thing is that probably, like, once you got booked in your first place, like, let's say you're a soft rep, right? And then somebody on Fox or CNN or whatever.
You've got to be legit or you wouldn't be there.
You got to be legitimate. Yeah. Do you feel that's kind of how that works? That if you get in one place, you establish that bona fides, no matter how you get it, then it just carries forward. Every place goes, okay, you're good.
Yep, it's sort of a social capital. You have a network that has vouched for you in one way or another. And yes, that's how it works. However, what in Simmons' case, where they fell down, was when I and others contacted them. We contacted directly to the top, from the top to the bottom, producers to the head of news, to tell them. And it wasn't just me. I ended up with a large group of high-level, mostly all retired CIA officers, including some of the highest levels of operations officers. When we contacted them, they just blew us off. That is a problem to me. That's
crazy.
I don't think it's a problem to make a mistake, whether it was 13 years or whether it was one time. Everybody makes mistakes. But when you get information that is, clear, real, good sources, and you just blow them off, there's a problem there. Right. And that is very disheartening to me. And not only did they blow us off, but the Simmons started a campaign against me. Right. To taking retaliation against me.
Well, I mean, if you think about Fox, and again, I'm not defending them. I would say the same thing if we're CNN or MSNBC or whatever. They have this guy who Donald Rumsfeld vouched for. Mm-hmm. And then they have this group of, intelligence officers that they can't maybe necessarily verify 100% or whatever. Or even if they can verify, if he goes, look, Donald Rumsfeld, all these generals, I've been on all these projects, which he had by this point in time. He had been on all these projects. Right. You don't think that they would have let me on those projects if I weren't? These guys, they're out for me. It's professional jealousy. They want this job.
And that is the ultimate hubris, is that you had, sent me a recent interview that Simmons had done now that he's out of prison. Right. And he's still going out there claiming that he is CIA, that the liberal left is out to persecute him, and all this nonsense. I was just blown away by that.
Roger Stone.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
is he still booking
It's
gigs?
crazy. I mean, I don't know what I would do, but I think that if I was in that situation, all right, damn it, you got me. Okay, I've paid my debt to society. I'm gonna now launch a new leaf, and I'm gonna go out and become a freaking car salesman or something. But why double down? Why?
Well,
it's pretty bad.
To kind of finish this thing out, I think there was something you had told me today that kind of blew my mind. Dave and I had talked a couple times on this show about Amaryllis Fox, alleged CIA officer who has been running around telling all kinds of absolutely insane stories. And I asked you about her today, and and just to caveat this, I've asked many CIA people that I know, and they all said never heard of her. I asked you about it, Kent, and I was surprised by what you had to say.
So, I mean, I would just say to begin with, a CIA person not having heard of someone is not, what's the old saying? Evidence.
Right.
Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence.
Right.
Just because a CIA person hasn't heard of her doesn't mean she's not CIA. I know she's CIA. I worked with her.
Yeah.
I sat in an office.
What's the deal with her?
There was a push to bring in a different type of recruit after 9/11, and she was one of them.
So she was in the employ of the CIA at one time.
I have not seen what she's claiming, but I'm assuming that she's claiming she was an operations officer in the CIA. Is that right?
She's claimed that she was a knock.
That she was an art. She had an art gallery, right?
That she was undercover as an art gallery,
as an art dealer, and then that she went into Pakistan. Was that right?
She was in Islamabad. I mean, the claims are so wild that she wrote an entire book.
I don't know what her cover was, but yes, she was an operations officer for the CIA. I did see something about her claiming to have been alone with a terrorist in Pakistan. I don't know the details, but that seemed very, very unreal to me. Mm-hmm. I think what you got is I know she was a real CIA officer. She was an operations officer. It sounds like she's exaggerating her experience.
Yeah. See, I was under the impression that when Jack and I talked about this, I was under the impression, and obviously you don't have to say anything, but that if somebody came in sort of a non-official capacity, if you were going to be if they were going to set you up as an art dealer, you would have a master in fine art. You would know something about art in order to be able to perform that job. It's kind of hard to put somebody in a position that they know nothing about and then sell it. But she didn't have any history, to my knowledge, a degree or anything like that. Anyway, that was just my impression. But I don't know anything about those programs. I don't know. So, anyway.
So, you hit on a pretty good point there. I believe that was a fatally flawed program. It included bringing in people like her.
Can
I tell you a Department of Agriculture story?
Yes, please. Be thrilled to hear it.
I first learned of the fallaciousness of government programs when I worked one summer as I was flunking out of college for a Department of Agriculture program in North Carolina. It was called the Boll Weevil Eradication Program. It was a huge program, had a PhD running it, had all kinds of equipment. We had pickup trucks, we had motorcycles. Me and another guy got a pickup truck and 2 motorcycles. We made boll weevil traps. We put boll weevil pheromone in the top of it, and we had. They had mapped out the entire region of eastern North Carolina. I knew where all the cotton fields were, and I had certain fields assigned to me and my buddy, and we would go and put these boll weevil traps, every 40 feet or something, every 7th row, something like that. So I was really excited. I thought, this is pretty doggone cool. I know boll weevils are bad. Boll weevils, I've heard it in history. They killed cotton and all that. This is great. I'm making a contribution to society, and I get to drive a pickup truck and a motorcycle. This is great. So I go out and we put out our traps, and then now my job is to run the traps. So every day I go to my fields and I go ride my motorcycle down. It's a mile long row, and you pull up the trap and you open it up. No boll weevils in that one. Go to the next one. So after about a week of this, I come back and I feel like, damn, I'm a failure. I haven't found one frickin' boll weevil. So I go back to the dude running it, and I said, boss, I got to apologize. I feel like I'm a failure here. I'm really into this program. I love helping our farmers, but I have not found a boll weevil. He said, son, there ain't been no boll weevils in the United States since 1946. But yet this program continued to be funded, continued to have, I'm assuming it was all over the South. I'm assuming there's dudes with government pickup trucks and mini bikes all over the South. We were the front lines of the boll weevil war.
That's amazing.
That's when I realized, you know what? Government may mean well, but once a program starts, number one, it can never stop, and number two, it's probably never going to be it's never going to be honestly evaluated.
Right.
So think of Amaryllis's program in those terms, and it all makes sense.
But Kent, explain to me, if she wrote this book, I mean, it didn't go through the PRB. She said so herself.
Yeah, that was.
So why isn't she in jail?
That's a good question. I have no idea. I did not really pay too close attention to that. Here's was my experience with her is, I saw probably it was like a video still on a website somewhere. And I glanced at it and I said, she looks kind of familiar, but I didn't even read it to see what it was. It was just like, yeah, she looks sort of familiar. No name jumped into my head when I saw her. Saw it again. I said, well, who the hell is that? Now I clicked on it and I opened it up, and it's Amaryllis Fox, former CIA officer, telling her story. Excuse me. And so I looked at the video, and she was being interviewed by CBS or somebody, and the things that she said, that she was a CIA officer, I know to be truth. I read that it seemed that the issue was that she had come to the headlines was she did not get PRB approval, and I stopped paying attention after that. I don't know why she didn't. I don't know what happened. I can tell you that there have been other cases. There was a knock that I knew, and he went by an alias that published a book, a sort of a scathing critique of
Ishmael Jones.
Yeah, Ishmael Jones, and they came after him. That they took his money. He was not allowed to profit from that. And I don't think they prosecuted him. But
do either of you know when the last time they prosecuted somebody was for not going through the PRB?
Oh, jeez. For not, well, I mean, there's back in the day, John Stockton, but they've prosecuted a number of people since then for allegedly revealing classified information.
Well, that's revealing classified information, but I mean just going through the PRB.
No, I do not.
Interesting.
And I don't want to know.
Yeah. I think this is the next Wayne Simmons scandal that's brewing behind the scenes, that something's going to happen there. And I don't know what, but
with Fox?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think the only scandal that I see is that she didn't get PRB approval. My guess is, although like I said, I stopped paying attention. My guess is that they did something behind the scenes. You know, a lawyer, publisher's lawyer, has gone to the PRB and they're coming to a post hoc agreement or something. That's my guess.
That'd be pretty amazing if that happened.
Yeah. Thank you, Alex. Alex is asking, what advice would you give to someone who wants to join the CIA? And did you ever work with Air or Maritime Branch?
That's probably a good way to kind of finish this out, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I worked with Air and Maritime. Your buddy Ron, I worked with him on that in the Philippines. Maritime guys were around quite a bit, and I worked with them. The best way to prepare. So what I suggest is look at the website. Everything is on the website nowadays. They'll tell you exactly what they're looking for. If they say, and it changes from time to time. Generally speaking, what they're looking for is you got to have a degree. You should have international experience. Sometimes that might be just a semester abroad, which is not necessarily the best preparation, but that's good enough to get in. Just look at and I'll say this for any job you're looking for that you want to qualify for. Look at the job description and then mold yourself into that whatever it is they're looking for, so that when you apply, you match the job description. And when you do, you're going to go to the top of the list.
Yeah.
And be ready for the security clearance. Security clearance is what kills a lot of people. Drugs, crimes, different things in your background can disqualify you. The CIA does not disqualify you for experimenting with drugs, as opposed to some
but you gotta come
law
clean.
enforcement agencies. Huh?
But you got to come clean, right?
Yeah. You have to admit to it, and there's some kind of threshold. But if you have experimented with marijuana or something like that, then the CIA does not immediately disqualify you. Keep your nose clean. Bottom line, don't get arrested. Don't get involved in illegal stuff, and then mold yourself to whatever it is they're looking for. It's all on the website.
Yeah. And also, if you're looking for good health insurance, that helps.
Yeah.
That gets you right in.
Sure.
Apparently. Because that gets you into Air Force intelligence and the CIA, apparently.
There you go.
Hey, thank you so much for your time. Everybody, thank you very much for joining us. If you have not subscribed to our channel, please subscribe to it. Check out our Patreon page. Check us out on iTunes or SoundCloud. And
Kent, do you have anything to promote? Do you want
do you have any books you want to promote, or a website or anything like that?
Peace, love, and universal happiness is all I need to promote.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Peace, love, and universal happiness.
Excuse me. Look at my website, KentClizbe.com. I've written a couple books. I'm also an intelligence historian. I specialize in Bolshevik covert influence. I went back from the Russian Revolution, beginning the Russian Revolution, looking at their covert influence operations. I wrote a book on that called Willing Accomplices.
Willing
Accomplices.
On my
website, KentClizbe.com.
KentClizbe.com.
Yep.
Thanks, Kent.
Yeah,
and thank you, everybody. We really appreciate it.
And Kent, do you think I can twist your arm to talk to us a little bit about that for the bonus segment after this?
Sure.
Okay.
We're going to stick around now?
Yeah, well, I'm going to kill the stream.
Yeah, let me take a break.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
See you later, guys. Thanks, everyone, for joining us.